Hello, Howard Mannella, Alternative Resiliency Services Corp. Continuity Insights is the management conference for business continuity, crisis management, and related domains in North America. One of the foundational elements of the conference is the Ask the Experts track, where senior leaders from the industry get together and discuss leading practices, submit contributions, and talk about them so that we can share our knowledge and disseminate it throughout the practice. This year, the Ask the Experts presentation was going to be held and moderated by Mark Carroll, VP of Business Continuity for Income Research and Management in Boston, on business continuity innovations. Unfortunately, the conference did not go off as planned. However, the experts got together. We decided that this was too important not to share. The show must go on, and this information was to be made available, virus or no virus. So we got together. Alternative Resiliency hosted a virtual Zoom conference call and a virtual Ask the Experts panel where we present the information, submit our contributions, and discuss them amongst ourselves. So we present that to you in the interest of best information sharing. Now, one apology, I started the video recording a little bit into the conference, so it's unfortunately cut off at the beginning. That includes Mark's opening remarks and my presentation. I've added my presentation and reprised it at the end of the video, so it's a little bit out of order. And I'm also including the remarks from Mark Armour, who runs the shop over at Brink's on innovations and best thinking and exercises. So with no further ado, the Ask the Experts track from Continuity Insights, Business Continuity Innovations. Enjoy.
The business continuity organization. So that data exists, but not a lot of people know about it, quite frankly. So one of the things that we did at Fusion as a result of our internal business continuity program that I ran and business impact analyses and risk studies and so forth that we did was we created something that we called organizational knowledge. And basically we built a virtual data room. And that's something that I've written a white paper on, and we've tried to communicate out to a lot of organizations to say, think about all of the information that you have from a business continuity point of view as a corporate asset, as something that the organization can use essentially as a virtual data room. It could be used for acquisitions, it could be used for divestitures, it could be used for strategic planning, it could be used for procurement. There's a lot of things that are there that other parts of the organization are unaware of. So the whole concept of this is to create greater exposure for the business continuity program, take all of that information that has been siloed in departments and then siloed on a consolidated basis in the business continuity organization, and make it available through an organizational knowledge strategy or a virtual data room strategy to be an asset to the organization and to improve and increase the awareness throughout the organization of the value of the business continuity organization, you know, what they've done, how they've done it, the information that they have. And we're seeing a lot of organizations now during the COVID situation who have adopted this strategy, taking advantage of that and saying, you know, we have a single place to go to look at all of the procedures that we run as an organization, how we're organized, where our facilities are, how many people we have in certain departments, how many people we have in certain buildings. You know, all of those things that all of us have collected as part of business impact analysis, risk analysis, any kind of studies that we've done from a BCDR point of view, but they're now looking at that as an asset that can be leveraged in terms of decision making, not just for COVID, but potentially for other things. So that's the concept behind organizational knowledge. take your business continuity, disaster recovery data, make it a corporate asset, treat it as a virtual data room, get greater exposure for your program, and make people aware of the terrific job that we all in business continuity are doing on their behalf. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it, and open it up to questions or comments.
John, this is Steve Ross. I think this is pretty much the same conversation that Chris and I were having just before we all got together.
Wow.
It's great to have the information, but when it reaches a certain critical point, and I don't know how big that point is, do you have some mechanism to find it?
Well, we did, and this is not a sales pitch, Steve, so I don't mean to take it that way. I'm just answering your question.
That's all.
We incorporated it all into the Fusion Framework tool that we use, so that we do have the ability to search. We do have the ability to run relationship reports, things like that. You know, there's other tools out there that certainly could provide that capability. But you make a very good point. Just having a mass of data without the ability to organize, categorize, and search it is great, but doesn't solve your problem. So I agree with you 100%. You know, capturing the data is one aspect of it. Being able to access it and make value decisions on it is another. So thanks for that comment, Steve.
Let me just tell you a little story that I think all of us, because I think all of us are now or have been consultants, and it relates to McKinsey. I was doing a project for a top 10 insurance company a couple of years ago, and I built a rather large database of all the information we'd collected for the BIA and risk assessment. At the same time, they hired a new chairman. The chairman brought in McKinsey to reorganize everything. You know the deal with McKinsey. And we were about 6 months into it, and McKinsey was about to finish its recommendations when one of their people came to us and said, gee, you've got all this great information about the company. Can we have your database? They were going to reorganize the company, and they had no idea what the company did.
Yep.
So that's really telling the truth about what you've just been saying.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the reasons I hate consultants. The caricature of a consultant that takes your watch, tells you what time it is, and keeps the watch as a payment is a little too prevalent. So I have a question. So you're using the Fusion platform to store all this.
Yes.
Do the documents, can they stay in the same format they are, or do they have to be translated into a different format, or are you just saving them all as kind of attachments with tags and that kind of a thing?
Yeah, the documents still exist in their original format, Howard. You know, there are references to them in the components of the database, but all the documents can still exist, can be tagged, can be referenced directly. So that's an important point also. You don't want to just say, we have this. You want to be able to actually demonstrate it in its original form. So that's another good comment.
So that tells me that there's some duplication going on, because you have, you know, if I'm a department, I might have my own documentation, but I'm also storing it in Fusion, or is this supposed to be the single source of truth and only one document exists and is sitting on that platform?
Well, it can be done either way. Either we can reach out into the other database to make the connection, so it still sits in its original place, and we just point to it, or we can pull it in. Either way.
Okay, great. And last question: do you have a data decommission policy or process? Like when things are old, do they get shredded? There has been an annual process of going back through, looking at everything, making sure things are still pertinent, and purging of it if they're not appropriate, adding new pieces and so forth, just like you would do in any BIA process. So the answer is yes.
Got one comment.
John,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
I got one comment that speaks to what all three of you gentlemen have touched on, which is destruction. If you can't find it, you don't know that it's gone and you can't destroy it. So you've got to have it, A, you got to be able to find it, B, and you got to be able to destroy it, C. And without that, you can't put hand over heart and say it's gone, because
Right.
you've got to find it first.
Right. Do you have a comment,
So
Phil?
John, I have a question actually.
Yeah.
So when I look at all the data that you're collecting, in a sense, you mentioned business continuity, disaster recovery, and risk management. I can see, people from those departments actually using. Do you have any encouraging enrollment capabilities to bring other people into using this database, like vendor management, purchasing? There's just, it's because there is so much data. If people had access before the crisis, how much better, how much more value the actual application itself would bring to the entire enterprise versus, in case of a crisis.
When I referenced business continuity, disaster recovery, risk management, I referenced them as the organizations that are gathering the data, but certainly the idea of organizational knowledge is to make that available to other parts of the organization. So procurement can look at it to say, who are all of our vendors? What do they supply? What processes, do they supply? Management could use it to look at it and say, how are we organized? If we have a particular product line that we want to get rid of, how is that product line, integrated into different facilities or whatever. So the idea is certainly to not just have the data, but to provide access to it from other parts of the organization so that it can be looked at as a corporate asset. HR is a perfect example, being able to look at, teams, being able to look at groups of people by facilities, groups of people who are involved in certain processes. So the whole concept is to make it a corporate tool and to have access to it from other parts of the organization. So the answer is yes.
Yeah, I actually saw in one case where an IT group used the data that was gathered during a BIA because they were trying to retire. Kind of a little bit on the destruction conversation, but they were trying to see what systems and applications they could retire, because as we know, especially in big corporations, often there are things that are being implemented by individual organizations that sometimes ITIS doesn't even know about, especially in today's world. And so they utilize the data to be able to, to work with the business. And they did it in a, they weren't like a, you shouldn't have done that, mind frame, but they were just trying to collaborate and say, hey, we should have all of this under the right umbrella and from a security standpoint and all that. So they used the data that came out of the BIA effort where, systems and applications that were supporting the processes that had gone through the effort had been identified. And so they had that, source of truth piece of information that was able to be analyzed. So, and again, I think, these are the types of issues that we miss the boat all the time on in our industry where, again, the level of scope, and it's one of the things I've always enjoyed about what we do is that, we get to see portions of the business that most people don't, because we get to see it, in many cases, we get to see everything. And even, the main executives of the company, they're still siloed in many ways. And so the ability to be able to have that collection of data and then be able to have that shared and available for others, exactly what John's point is here, in regards to putting everything into this virtual data room. I think it's something that I always encourage people to say, hey, let people know that besides the fact that you want them to do a good job when they're doing the effort for their individual organization, let them know that, hey, you're going to be gathering this, and oh, by the way, you're not just gathering it for XYZ organization, you're gathering it for everybody within this enterprise. And that, hey, if you could find value in it, of course, within, appropriate security, because depending on what it is, you don't want to just be letting it out. But that this can be made available for other analysis, for other business purposes besides the specific BIA effort that that we're undertaking, or whatever. Because there's a lot of things other than BIA that we get data on that come out of these efforts. So.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. If there are any more questions, let's get them out. I'm trying to be the bad guy and looking at the time here. The time is not our friend.
Sorry, I ran over.
No, it's all good. If there's nothing more, then I think Phil, we're going to skip over Doug. So Phil, I think you are next. Let's make sure that this is indeed you. Senior leadership as always. This is you, right?
Yeah, it looks like me.
Okay, go.
Well, as everyone on this thing knows me, has known me for quite a while now. Been a consultant for quite a few years, as well as a practitioner. Probably half the time I've been a practitioner working for a company, and the other half being a consultant. In working as a consultant, I do have a lot of conversations with senior leaders and getting their buy-in into the program, sharing some of the data that we all just talked about before the BIA, after the BIA, as we're developing plans and strategies and building resources and all these other kind of things, because ultimately they have to approve their budget and for different things as well. But sure enough, at the beginning of every project, somewhere kind of toward the end of our conversation, after we've got the okay to go ahead and have our kickoff meeting with the business units and different things like that, the senior leadership will always go and say, one thing about your program you have to do. And I go, yeah, what's that? And he goes, I want you to minimize the amount of time that you work with the people in the business units. Mandatory. So the sooner you can get this thing in and done, the better, kind of thing. And I'm literally talking about almost every single client that I ever have. So I kind of came up with a term that, the longer it takes to implement our programs, the less valuable it is to the company itself. And you know me, I've had a lot of innovative type of ideas over the years to speed up the process, to make it simple, make it as easy as we can for people in the business units to work with us, encourage them as much as we can, but especially making it easy for them. And you can read the screen on the options part. These are all the different things that we've tried over the years. But what I want to fall back on today is something that I put together when I first started the Center for Continuity Leadership, which is now, 14 years, 13 years, something like that. And that's these online training modules. I still believe today that it's probably one of the most important silver bullets that we can work with, whether you're a consultant or a practitioner, because we no longer have to bring people off the production floor and into a classroom. We can actually send a video out to the people in the business units anywhere in the world, of course, and they work. Got a couple of people who's on this workshop. One of them especially was one of our very early customers. He can speak about it later if he wants to. But if you ever worked with anybody who is actually innovative and creative, of course their latest work is their best. And what we're doing today is just phenomenal. I don't even work in that department anymore. Paul does that whole thing, him and Blake's team. He's our developer. And he runs the team. But especially now, when you're going to have people not only in the office, but virtually, these things really work. I've only had a handful of clients who's actually measured the results of these things. And one of them was USAA, and nobody from USAA is on the phone now. So anyway, one of them was the USAA, and they came several points of success. They continue to be our clients today in building new trainings and updating, especially the older ones. But I asked them kind of toward the end of our conversation, I said, now, when you have this whole, because they bought a whole series of these trainings for all the different components of a program, one for the BIA, one for exercising, one for building plans, refreshing plans, you know, all these different things. And all of them nowadays are only about 10 minutes long. Matter of fact, none of them are over 10 minutes long. I know we work closely with Fusion, but anyway. I asked him, I said, so when do people watch these videos? He goes, Phil, I'll plan an exercise. And I'll send out we'll get them on the calendar a month in advance. We'll send them out a reminder about a week before and tell them they've got to, they really need to take this training before they jump into the, the tabletop exercise and so forth. And I asked him, I said, so when do people actually watch this thing? And he goes, anywhere from 24 hours to 1 hour before our workshop. They'll watch these trainings, right? Of course, everybody's doing it at the last minute. And he goes, but Phil, that's not a bad thing, because they come into the room ready to participate in whatever it is that we're doing. And one of the consultants, and I'm going to go back with one other story and I'll be done again, but one of the consultants, we were working with Kyocera, actually, down in San Diego, and we were running a BIA through all the different departments and so forth, and we would bring in 3 or 4 departments, do a workshop on the BIA or do a training on the BIA, and then do the follow-up workshops with individual units, business units. And sure enough, about 2 weeks after the initial kickoff workshop and so forth, we come to a business unit, we get the people in the room and literally they're asking, well, what's a BIA again? Kind of thing. So anyway, that's I'm just going to say it's an awesomely great tool. Everyone here knows that we develop these, but as videos are going today, as much as we're doing virtual, even webinars, short trainings, anything that you can do virtually and with videos, I think that we must do these things moving forward. I don't even think it's going to be a question another 6 months or a year from now. If we're not going to take advantage of this particular technology in what we do within the business units, I think we're still going to have a lack of buy-in from senior leadership. Anyway, I'll stop with that.
Let me kick it off with a question, Phil. You said USAA measured effectiveness. How did they do that?
Well, they measured it at a couple of different ways. They measured how much time their business continuity team were working with the business units, how much time they spent training the business units, how much time, so this is all before they actually implemented the trainings, and how much people were participating, how many people would show up to the meeting, how many people were participating, and so forth. Then they implemented these trainings and they measured the same things. How many people were participating, how many people showed up, how many people watched the training versus before they got into the room, and things like that. And they found that now the transfer of knowledge wasn't measured, but the participation level was. And they found that their particular business continuity team members were working less and getting a higher participation from the people in the business unit.
So they tracked hours.
Yeah.
Okay. No more questions, Your Honor.
They gave me a chart and so forth. Yeah, that's what I mean. Very few people ever do that. Even in the training industry, they don't do that very often as well. But this particular client actually did measure that.
Anyone else?
Any other questions?
We found doing this very, very helpful. We were one of the, when I was at Amgen, we were one of the users of RipCord's tools, and we really found that especially when you get a point where the program's large enough that you can't support doing instructor-led coursing anymore. Especially you just talk about time zones in 64 countries around the globe. It was going to be impossible to be able to do it. So there were certain courses that still demanded hands-on, especially more like in our emergency response element of the program as opposed to some of the others. But again, with the capabilities of being able to build in, we used one that we had them build that was for we were talking about, Howard, the emergency notification tool. So we had one that they built that actually taught people how to use the tool. And while they weren't working in it live, it did replicate the actual environment that would be used, and with screenshots and other capabilities to be able to have people get comfortable with using the tool and the simple things that they needed to do, and definitely saved a lot of time. And I remember when we implemented the role-based training program, one of the to Phil's point, one of the first questions that I got was, okay, well, you have all these things marked as mandatory for everybody that's in these different roles. How much time does that mean? Because of course, on top of everybody else's corporate training requirements, they're very sensitive to how much time people are spending away from doing what it is they actually got hired for. So, using appropriate short video training pieces really was extremely valuable and paid big dividends.
Yeah, I'd like to just weigh in also. At Fusion, we were looking to put together a active shooter training program, and one of the things that I found when I was organizing that was, if I was out in Rolling Meadows, Illinois, I was going to get the Rolling Meadows Fire Department to do it. If I was in downtown Chicago, I was either going to get the Chicago Police or the building management to do it. If we were over in London, we had a different organization. So we worked with Paul and RipCord, and we put together a video training program on active shooter, and that allowed us to have a consistent message across the organization. So just another example of the value that I saw.
Very good. Any other questions?
Thanks, guys.
Outstanding. And then we have Mr. Carroll. I believe that you are next. Let me make sure. Why is this not working? Let's try this again. Once more with feeling. Okay, and for posterity, I unfortunately started the recording after my slide, so I'll just tack on my comments and redo my slide after the call's over and everybody drops, just to make sure we have a complete set of knowledge. So, Mr. Carroll, sir, go.
Okay, so
3
in my
minutes.
organization, folks, I've got responsibility for insurance, all aspects of insurance, and it's not my bailiwick, to be honest. It was something I love it because it's relatively new in my career, and in this stage of the game, you don't get a lot of new. So I find it interesting. I find it fascinating, but I am not an insurance body by trade, and I consider myself to be a step above a novice, not even close to a practitioner. So we have as most do. We have cyber coverage in a number of different silos within the organization. And I really struggle sometimes with what's covering what from the from the cyber perspective. And then what falls to the white space and effectively is not covered. So it really isn't that clear. So, you can look at cyber coverage, you can buy insurance policies, you can check the box and make your payments, and then step back and say, okay, what have I got? Well, in this situation where you don't know, you can do nothing and live with that ambiguity, lack of clarity, and then wait until something happens and then put your hand up and say, I'm filing, and not know where you're filing or have your broker assist you with the filing. But that's kind of a blind situation. You can interpret the insurance language and review it and try to get real comfortable with all the heretofores and therefores and whatever else, and step back and look at potential issues. But that's not really my strength, and I've not had the experience to do that at a yeoman's level. You can ask and talk to people about what are you doing and how are you doing it, and what coverage covers what, and you can actually go do a tabletop and define generic cyber top coverage for an experience. So what we did, turns out we had already done a internal cyber exercise, not insurance related to, what would we do in the event of a cyber attack? How would we handle it from a technology perspective? What would the firewall activity be? What would the shutdown activity be? How would we handle forensics? All that kind of good stuff. And we got a lot of good knowledge from that, but from that knowledge, we wound up saying in those discussions in that tabletop, from the insurance side, we've got cyber coverage. Yeah, that's cyber coverage. Yeah, that's cyber coverage. but not really knowing which policy and which provider would have to step up and handle it, make payment, help us remediate. Okay, so we then step back and say, look, let's do this again. Let's take the exact same exercise, let's turn it on its head and make it an insurance-centric exercise. So we know what the event is, we know what our remediation would be from the experience we had doing the initial tabletop. Let's do a second round tabletop and bring in our broker and work with our broker to help build a cyber response scenario and step back and say, okay, this happened. Now what do we do? And what we found was, this piece of it goes to errors and omissions. That piece of it goes to our core cyber coverage. We've got fidelity bond insurance, which is, internal employee theft and fraud. And part of it went to that based on that scenario definition. And then under the property and casualty, some of it is, remediation based on things getting destroyed or things getting maligned. So we were able to literally step back and align all the fallout from a cyber event with exactly what the individual policies were that we would have to file under, knowing what covers what, and finding overlap, to be honest, and finding some areas where we had, overlapping coverage. The first X dollars might be in the cyber policy, but beyond that, part of it goes to errors and omissions because it's related to a bad transaction that was forced by a fraudulent event. Or it was handled with employee involvement. And as a result, it winds up being something under our fidelity bond for employees. So we really crystallized exactly what applies to what and took away all that ambiguity, all that vagueness, all that lack of surety. And we did it by having people talk through the second round of the same exercise. So they were comfortable with the subject matter, comfortable with our overall response. And then the issue became, how does the insurance fit to that? So, questions?
All right, quick question then from Howard. I often you brought in an external non-employee into your exercise, and it wasn't like the general public, but I often get a lot of trepidation from clients that say we don't want to expose our gaps or inefficiencies to outsiders. Did you run into any of that? And if so, how did you overcome it?
We didn't. You got to pick your shots in terms of what you're going to talk about and divulge. But our insurance broker has, signed NDAs with us, and they have intimate knowledge of our financials, of our employee information, of our property values, et cetera. So there's really nothing in there from a factual perspective that they don't know or don't couldn't have access to from the sources. Now, that said, would we tell them about things that we didn't do right? Well, probably didn't have anything to tell them, to be honest. It was really pretty much nothing to divulge. Everything was pretty much in the open. So
fair enough.
Yeah, it isn't an outside party. It's really a partner. They're an extension of our enterprise.
All right, fair enough. Thanks. Anyone else? Wow, you were so complete, Mark, that there were no questions.
Okay, I'll take that.
All right, let me keep flipping through. But there, I believe Mr. Ross is next on the hot seat.
Okay.
Yes, I love the self-portrait too.
Yeah. First of all, I'm glad whoever fixed this. I didn't, when we were supposed to fill it out and say industry or firm, I thought I was just supposed to put the name of my company. It wasn't meant as an ad. The genesis of this was a session at last year's conference where some fellow got up and gave a talk that was managing recovery from a cyber attack with a CBCP. You don't need a CISSP. And I attended that since I have both. And if anybody was in there with me, you probably saw the smoke coming out of my ears. The basic thought was that you can recover from a cyber attack just like any other form of recovery. The a lot of that, and I've seen it in quite a few business continuity people, is that it's not my problem. That's an IT problem. It's not something I don't deal with, or if I have to deal with it, I'll get involved when the time comes. I hear, and this is, you hear it in conference after conference, CI and all the others, business continuity must demand a seat at the table. How many times have you heard that? And I listen to it and I think, before you get a seat at the table, you got to have something you're going to contribute when you sit down. And the approach that it's really an IT problem and we'll get involved later, you're not able to contribute. And if you want to be a contributor and have that seat and help guide the company through what they're going to do with cyber recovery, you're going to have to be technically adept enough. You don't have to be a deep technician, but you have to be able to talk the talk. And if you can't, hire somebody who can. Then you can say, what are things that business continuity might do without trying to install this package and use Splunk and use QRadar and use, it goes on and on and on, that you could do, that you could contribute. Some of my ideas were, if you're going to be moving into the cloud anyway, cloud has a much better history of resilience against cyber attacks than individual companies do. So plan for recoverability into the cloud. One of the things that happens, particularly as we move more and more into internet-provided communications, if the system goes down, so does the means to communicate. So this is not terribly different than, who was it? Howard, I think your initial presentation. Think about how you're going to communicate by other means. Everything from private internet accounts to out of band to texting, whatever. You can take systems that are client server and have them run in a degraded mode that can run on a local server collecting data while the other systems are being brought back up, so that when they come up, you haven't lost transactions and you can continue serving customers. Or you should encourage the IT people to drill on how would you restore files if they were corrupted. This is a particular ransomware issue, but it's not only ransomware. So I just really feel that it is incumbent on us in the business continuity space, which to me has always incorporated IT disaster recovery, to earn our place at the table, not just demand it. So I'll shut up and let you guys throw things at me.
Steve, I agree 100%. And just an editorial comment. We are all in this game called recovery, continuity, resilience, whatever you want to call it. But knowing somebody's a CBCP or anything like that doesn't tell you what their background is. So you and I can probably talk about IT technology because that's our roots. But I can't talk MSDS data sheets beyond a 4-minute conversation with somebody because I don't come out of the environmental health and safety side, but a lot of continuity folks do. So I think the continuity discussion's got to go from, oh, okay, you've got your CBCP, you run this organization. Let's talk a little bit about, just in general, our experiences, because I think it varies depending upon where you come from. You can't just simply say, I know continuity. It's like I said earlier, I don't really come out of the insurance side. I got an understanding of it, but I would not consider myself to be an insurance god.
But then what you did was you said, I'm going to lean on my broker, right? As you said, make it an extension of your company. So if you don't have that skill, get that skill.
Bingo. Yep. And also, to your point, don't dismiss that skill. Don't dismiss it because you don't have it.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah, it's about putting the right team together. I mean, don't be shy about what you don't know. Be transparent about it. and I know that's challenging, certainly, especially when you're running a program and you're, you want to have executive support, but they recognize, that if you have, you bring a set of skills, but there may be others within the organization or even outside the organization that you need to bring to make it a comprehensive program. And especially today's world where things are changing so often that it's hard to stay on top of everything, especially when you're doing business continuity DR planning, because there is so much change. And so to be transparent about that and make sure that you've got the right expertise besides what it is that you bring to the table is key. So yeah, I'm right with you, Steve.
Good. I didn't think I was going to get a lot of pushback from this crowd, but I did think if we were at the conference, there would have been some people who would either have just thrown tomatoes or would have folded their arms and grumped.
Specialty is not bad, but I think as business continuity DR folks, we have to be more. I mean, just right there. I mean, to be doing BR and DR. That's there's not a lot of people that can do that well, right? I mean, and not that you necessarily have to. Again, it depends on the organization. In some cases, yeah, I just need to do BR really well because we've got good DR people. We just need to make sure we've got the right set of skills available to the organization to be able to support what the needs are. So
well, and it's gotten a lot more complicated over the years too. I mean, when I was running a data center, it was large scale IBM mainframe equipment, and you kind of everything was in the room. You knew what it all was, and so when we got into DR and business continuity, it was a much simpler world. Today, it's way more complicated. So even though I think I understand aspects of what goes on today, you really need expertise in certain areas to complement your knowledge, or you're exposing yourself.
Well, when you said back when I was running a data center, the first thing that brought to my mind was, gee, I didn't know data centers ran on steam back then, but we're all kind of in the same boat. So I won't say that.
Well, how the power was being produced is a whole other conversation.
You joke, but in New York City, we sell steam, and an awful lot of them drive their pumps on steam-driven pumps. So that's funny.
We did used to open up the motor. We did used to open up the motor generator set and slide pizzas in on top of it at night to keep them warm, though.
Hey, I always called a 2319 a pizza box, so it's no problem.
Exactly.
But the computers we all started with aren't as strong as this thing. So
yeah, no, you're completely
correct. All right, we're coming up to the top of the hour, so there's one more slide that anybody here can talk to, and that's me. But I want to take
Howard?
Yep.
Howard, can I
Yes,
can I just get 1 minute real quick? Because I
Sure,
want to
go ahead.
elaborate on what Chris was saying about not having the skills, and it's true. As a matter of fact, I kind of like to tell people, hey, if there's a crisis, I'm going to the beach, because if I've done my job well, I've equipped people. So I think one of the new skills that we're going to need to know moving forward is the skills of all the other people in the organization. Who does what their experiences are. I mean, I'm basing this on Mark's comment as well, right? I think that's our job. And because I'm beginning to think through a concept or a term that I thought about a year and a half, 2 years ago, about a team of teams. Not just a team, but a team of teams throughout the entire organization, each having their own roles of responsibility in the responding, restoring, and recovering a company. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there, is that we need to bring these teams of teams together, and whatever the crisis is, making sure that the people who are expertise in that particular aspect of the company, or that asset of the company, is the one who's leading the actual crisis. Anyway,
I don't know how you did
throw
it.
that out there real quick.
I don't know how you did it, but that was a perfect lead-in for what I'm going to talk about, which is different from this, to be honest, because it's more late-breaking, COVID-related. And Steve's slide really gets to the business value of business continuity. Are we just like the disaster geeks with pictures of the World Trade Center on our business cards, which I find personally offensive, or are we actually adding value? This situation here is kind of the same thing. What you're seeing on the slide is kind of the same thing as what I talked about before. So instead, stupid little stupid little discussion I had with one of my clients that had a global team of teams, to your point. And when we were setting up the program, I said, well, we need Zoom, we need Slack, we need all that. And my client said, well, everybody has Zoom. And I said, yeah, but we're setting up special Zoom for business continuity. And they said, why can't they use their own? I said, 2 reasons. Number 1, during an emergency, they'll be needing their own. Number 2, when that person leaves or wins the lottery, gets run over by a bus, their Zoom goes away and now people can't use it. So we're going to set up one global Zoom for business continuity. And his response was, but what if London and New York need them at the same time? And I said, well, they won't. We're not planning for global multi-site compromise. We're planning for single-site compromise. And the only 2 exceptions for that will be cyber and pandemic. So in those situations, you want everybody talking to each other. Same thing with a Slack. We'll set up one Slack channel and make everybody use that for traffic. And they won't step on each other because we won't have 2 emergencies at the same time. The only 2 exceptions being pandemic and cyber. Lo and behold, here we are, and it's gratifying and somewhat humbling to, well, you can never tell the client, I told you so, but it's gratifying and humbling to get onto that company Slack channel for BCP and watch the traffic going back and forth and watch somebody in one location say, oh, that's what you guys are doing. That's right. That's a good point. Thanks. We'll do that too. Or, hey, thanks for that catch. So that cross communication, forcing that through laying the proper pipes is absolutely essential. That was my last bit that I was going to do. And that brings us to the end of the
Hey, Howard,
Mark, do you want to yes, sir.
If I can jump off of that,
please.
I sit down every I think 2 weeks now. Monday morning, I check our crisis call bridge, and I call it, make sure it's okay, etc. And I do that because I've got the marks on my back from history. Years back, we had a crisis call bridge all tied into our overall call bridges for the firm, and somebody renegotiated the contract and changed the vendor. So I went to use the call bridge, and it didn't exist anymore. So I have to sit down every 2 weeks to make sure it's still really there.
Yeah, I had that happen once where, IS or IT, whoever was responsible for it, they didn't see any usage on it. And so they figure, oh, well, they must not need it anymore. Even though it had crisis management, whatever on, as the title of it, it's like, oh, just some penny pincher that was, I'm probably doing their job, but some rhyme or reason didn't go into it. So anyways, you probably noticed that Chris Wright did not do a presentation. That's because despite the constant harassment from Mark Carroll, I never turned any slides. So, but I didn't want to miss out being part of the group today. I appreciate you guys. It's wonderful to see everybody's faces and to hear your voices and to know that you're well and doing well. And we can't wait to be able to get back together and do this in the full scale format again, hopefully next year.
Right.
Well, that's something that I never ever hear, that somebody's ever glad to see my face. I have to carry bacon around in my pocket just so the dog will play with me. One point on a semi-serious note, we're talking about the conference bridges not being there anymore. There's the flip side, which very much goes neglected, and that's security of conference bridges, because they're always out there. They don't get changed. Passwords don't get rotated. I have a 3-part series on that on my website, and it's on LinkedIn as well, called The Wrong Years on the Wire. And things like the crisis conference bridge. When was the last time you changed it or changed a password and somebody left the company a year ago and can still jump on? Or somebody leaves the company and they remember that, Bob's monthly product review is always first Monday at 9 o'clock, and the password is Bob's mobile phone number, and he jumps on, and whoa, it's still there. And somebody says, who joined? And he just ignores, and they just move on and spill secrets. So there's two sides to that coin.
Well, think about all the issues that have come out with Zoom, in the last month. And a lot of it I know had more to do with the free version that they were, providing to schools and such. But still, it's exactly the same type of issue. Well, nice to have these tools available to us, but if you're not securing and changing passwords and the back end logistics that need to be done to make them really effective, to Mark's point, available when you want them, and then to your point, Howard, secure when you are using them. We're lacking in management oversight.
Yeah, we're not using the chat feature here because it's just poker game of people. But I read somewhere, and I haven't tested it, that even if you have private chats going back and forth, if you're recording the Zoom, then all of that gets preserved. So be super careful of what you say in chat on Zoom. It's the same thing with emails, kind of a thing. We're past the hour. I'm happy to hang around because I literally don't have anything else to do today.
Yeah, I got to run.
It's
Good
Friday.
seeing you guys.
It's
a
a weekend.
Hey, take care.
That's great, guys. Thanks for organizing.
Be safe, everyone.
Guys, thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Howard.
Howard, thanks for handling this. Good job.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, buddy, log it off.
All right, I'm going to stay on and keep the and redo my slide, and then I'll log it off. You're free to jump if you want. Okay, so for the recording, my apologies that I did not start the recording until after I did my piece. So I'm going to go over slide 5 again with the global SaaS firm as an example. So global SaaS firm, offices around the globe, one of them in London. London's a high value territory, obviously, and they're not a million miles away from Monument, which is one of the favorite, and London Bridge, which is a favorite of jihadists from coast to coast. And so they had a terror attack, and the standard way to attack this, or the the standard way to address something like this with emergency communications is that business continuity will use the mass emergency notification system, but kind of do it in a silo. So they're doing something that's not necessarily their responsibility. They're going rogue in some respects, and HR is not involved, and they get involved after the fact. The other traditional way to do this, everybody has seen the HR sending out their email through internal email saying, hey, we've had a terror attack. We hope everybody's okay. People are our most important asset, love HR, and it kind of ends there. So this company was unique in that business continuity was pretty much baked into their organization's DNA by the time we rolled it out. That was done through recurring training, through recurring maintenance, recurring exercise, and recurring drill on the emergency notification platform, and getting HR involved and staying involved with HR, joined at the hip as mutual advisors, not just others an HR person in a team. So HR used the business continuity enabler mass notification, it was somewhere now, and sent the text and the voice messages. We all know them and kind of giggle at them. Press 1 if you're okay, press 2 if you're dead. And they got the reports, and at the same time, they were using the BCP enabler, and at the same time, they were acknowledging business continuity and kind of running this as a mini business continuity event. So the good news coming out of this as well, because of the training and because of the pushing out of the requirement to do the training and requirement to send out the quarterly drills out to the critical event teams and kind of federating business continuity, the response rate from those press 1 if you're okay notifications, typically in a company, is they 60 is good, 80 is great. Theirs in London was in the high 90s as a percent of people that actually acknowledged and responded to these blasts. So that was the slide that was missing in the middle. Everything else is a complete package. Bob McCow, our hero, we will send this to you and you can put this on the website. And with that, we will conclude the Zoom. And thank you. Everybody stay safe.
Hi, everybody. Mark Armour here with Brinks. I realize I have the COVID-19 hair and the beard going on, so I don't have a dress shirt or a jacket. I do promise to be more presentable the next time that you see me. I'm going to be talking about exercising. So this is a good time to pause the video, go get your gym clothes and your workout equipment. I'll wait here. Seriously though, we're going to be talking about business continuity exercising. I want to make a distinction first between business continuity and technology recovery, or ITDR. When we talk about technology recovery testing, we're talking about having specific components in place and following kind of a linear progression of steps to restore a technology resource back to the end user. I think for that reason, having kind of a testing centric approach is valid, right? You want to make sure that you can restore that IT application or system back to a capacity and a functionality and within a time period that's necessary or acceptable to those users. When we talk about business continuity though, we're talking about delivering a service or product absent a resource. And that resource could be technology, it could be workspace, it could be staff, it could be third-party products and resources. We don't know. It could be any combination of those. So we talk about exercising in the business continuity space. What we're talking about is bring people in a room and talking through maybe the various strategies that are in place, the resources that are available to them, the expertise and the competencies. So a test-based approach is not really going to suit us. What we really want to do is we want to exercise. We want to strengthen people's competencies through practice and awareness and understanding, and talk through some of the problems and identify areas that can be improved. I think most people in the business continuity profession agree with this, that exercising versus testing is probably the preferred approach. But I think a lot of people just change their terminology. They're still doing essentially a test. They're just calling it an exercise. So I want to talk about some unique approaches that you might employ so that what you're doing actually is an exercise and not just a test rebranded. So let's talk about first, when I say that our exercises really are tests, what do I mean? So I think traditionally we go into an exercise, we define some objectives for the exercise with very strict parameters that have to be met, right? You have to execute a strategy within a specific time frame. And unless those parameters are met, well, you've failed your exercise. You don't fail an exercise. You just maybe fail to improve, which means you didn't perform an exercise. The other thing that we do is we expect people to follow their plans. With the expectation that, well, if they don't follow their plans or their plans aren't adequate, then you have to update those plans after the exercise. And think about these two things from the perspective of the participant in your exercise. Their interest is getting this done as quickly as possible with as little effort and make it as painless to them as possible. So the incentive for them is just to pass the exercise, to satisfy all those objectives. And if there's issues or problems that come up, do their absolute best to avoid the business continuity person from finding out about it, because that's just going to be more effort and things for them to do following the exercise. The other thing that we do is we put a lot of time and effort into the preparation of exercises, right? We're developing scenarios, injects that we're going to deliver, and then we're going to kind of orchestrate this whole exercise. And there's a lot of time and effort put into that. So let's talk about some unique approaches that we might employ so this is more realistic and that we get more value out of it. First, let's eliminate all these objectives and let's just make it one. We want to improve, right? So traditionally, the incentive is to avoid extra work. So if there's issues or problems, we're probably not going to raise them. Incentivize people to bring up problems or issues. Reward people. It doesn't have to be a significant outlay of cash, but simple prizes so that people come up maybe with improvement opportunities that can maybe just be addressed right there as part of the exercise or as something down the road. Then they're incentivized to do so. And if that's your only objective, I think that's perfectly fine. The other thing that I recommend is random scenarios. So what I've started doing is I don't develop any scenarios ahead of an exercise at all. I go in with all of my participants, and there's online tools that will generate a scenario for you. You can write scenarios on scraps of paper and have people pull them out of a hat. You can Google disaster, and whatever the top story that comes up in the search results, there's your scenario. And doing it this way, I'm not doing a whole heck of a lot of time to preparation. And you know what? I can do more exercises as a result. The other big benefit is I found kind of doing the testing centric approach and developing all of my scenarios and injects ahead of time. It gives my participants the impression that when an event occurs, I am the knower of all. I see everything. I've got all the information. And we all know in a disaster, the opposite is true. I depend on other people to tell me, hey, we've had an issue and here's what we're experiencing. Here's what we don't know. Here's what we need. So if I go in with the same level of awareness and understanding as the participants, then they're going to understand, well, business continuity doesn't know and see all. I'm going to have to engage them to help me in my response and recovery. So there's some benefit and some value there. The other thing I recommend using exercises for is measurement. It's a way to measure our capability. What do people know? Is that knowledge consistent? Are the people have different understandings of the resources that are available to them and the level of understanding of their counterparts, as well as the responsibilities and the level of accountability of their counterparts? We go in wondering if the plan is satisfactory, but we've never really stopped to think, well, do people have the authority to execute the steps within your plan? So an exercise will kind of inform you and all of your participants. So you have a consistent understanding awareness of what exists, what's lacking, and what steps you can take to improve. So just through that exercise alone, you've already improved. So those are some takeaways. Do with them what you will. Hopefully they're of benefit. And again, hopefully I'll be more presentable the next time you see me.